Derek Bodner, of course, covers the 76ers. You can read his stuff all over the place. USA Today. Formerly used to be able to read it on our website, 973ESPN.com. And really, a lot of really good stuff recently from Derek, who was formerly with Philly Mag. And you can check out this article, which he just filed yesterday. Got a retweet from one Sam Henke. And Derek joins us now to discuss the Sixers. And, Derek, what's going on, pal? How you been?
Not much. Doing well.
Well, first off, we found Henke. He's reading your stuff, right? Now we can at least track him down a little bit.
Yeah, well, Sam had retweeted an article about Mike Zarin, the assistant GM up in Boston a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think it's so much that he's looking out for me, but that he's looking out for his former second in command. I mean, if he would have retweeted an article about the second in command in Boston and didn't retweet one about his second in command, that probably would have looked bad. So I think it probably has more to do with that.
Okay, so help me with this guy's name with the Philadelphia 76ers, who you wrote about, who you said was the driving force behind the Sacramento trade. And the reason Sam retweeted it, because he said, not just that trade, all of my trades.
Yeah, I mean, the way it was described to me was, pretty much any trade of significance. And I mean, I'm sure part of that is, Sam, for all of his faults of not dealing with the media, he does like to give the guys underneath him credit. But you talk to people with Houston, you talk to people with the Sixers, and that really did become Sachin Gupta's forte. He spent a lot of time trying to find creative ways to use our cap flexibility to get, both future quote-unquote assets, which nobody likes, a term a lot of people don't like to use, but also just improving probabilities and things like the pick swaps, things like the future picks. I mean, that was his background. Started off in computer science, but really, when he started working for ESPN, he became an expert on the salary cap, and he kind of used those two fields to try to engineer some trades.
So basically, can you I want to go back to that pick swap and talk about why it was such a smart deal and how it impacts maybe this season more so than people thought it might.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the list of things that they got they got, in terms of players, they got Jason Thompson, who they didn't end up keeping, Carl Landry, who played for a year, and then Nick Stauskas, who is still playing, and occasionally, sometimes every now and then, he's even playing well. Not lately so much, but he at least had a decent start to the season. But really the key for that trade was, first of all, the draft pick, and right now it's an unprotected 2019 draft pick from one of the more dysfunctional teams in the league, a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a decade. So to have an unprotected draft pick is big there. And then also the swap picks in both 2016 and 2017. Now, that didn't come to fruition in 2016. Obviously, the Sixers were nearly historic in their futility. But I think because of that, we maybe underestimated the chance that could happen in 2017. And if you looked at it right now, the Sixers are a half a game ahead of Sacramento, which not a big deal. They'd swap one spot. But where it really comes into play is the extra. Well, first of all, it comes into play because the teams are kind of going in separate directions. The Sixers have obviously won 11 of their last 16 games. Sacramento is struggling, 3-7 in their last 10. That half a game divide could end up being a couple draft spots. It could be the difference between maybe the 9th pick in the draft and the 5th pick in the draft, which would be pretty big in and of itself. But right now, if you looked at it, the Sixers have about a 21% chance of the top 3 pick. The Kings have about a 10.5% chance. So it would basically, your odds of getting a top 3 pick would go from 20% to just about 30%, which is it's a pretty big deal. It's about double the chance of getting a top 3 pick.
Yes, and you're right. Because, now let me ask you this: if they don't pick swap this year, what happens next year?
Next year, there's nothing. There's pick swaps in 2016 and 17, and then a future draft pick. And that draft pick could have been it was initially top 10 protected in 2018 or unprotected in 2019. Because the Kings owe the Bulls a draft pick, that now is automatically 2019. So there is nothing in the cards for next year.
So it's either they pick swap this year, nothing happens next year, or just wait till 2019 and then they get the Kings' first round pick.
Well, and that 2000 they can pick swap this year and get the Kings' 2019 first round pick.
Oh, they can get both.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My God.
And I mean, they got that for taking on a very small amount of salary that, I mean, the Kings thought they were going to really make a playoff push last year, and they got salary cap space. They used it for Rajon Rondo, Kosta Koufis, and I think Marco Bellinelli was the third name they used that cap space to sign. And they were just, first of all, I think they dismissed the value of the pick swaps because, again, you look at it and you say, it's the Sixers. We don't have to worry about finishing worse than them. Mm-hmm. And here we are, and things happen. But I think they really had grand visions of what they're going to do with that cap space. And I think most teams tend to overrate what they can do with cap space. I think you can talk about the people who've been talking about that Lakers pick and expecting them to make a turnaround, and they probably overrated what the Lakers could do with their cap space. And I think the Sixers kind of preyed on that because they realized, look, we're not going to do anything with our cap space. Nobody's going to consider us. The Kings probably aren't going to materially improve with their cap space, so we can get this draft pick in the future. And again, so much of this plan and so much of the NBA in general, people are hesitant to wait for the future. Like waiting, people get very impatient, and impatience causes people to overpay. And this was a pretty clear example of that.
Derek Bodner's with us. Is Gupta still in the organization?
No, he's not. He is an advisor to some of the ownership group, to Joshua Harris, for some of their properties outside of the Sixers.
Okay. So
they'll occasionally ask for his opinion. No, he is not. He is looking to get back into the NBA. We'll see what happens if, he's under a similar deal as Sam, where I think he can't work for the first year being out. So we'll see what happens in the summer. But no, he is not currently with the team.
Wait, so Sam, when he parted ways with the Sixers, he was not allowed back in the league for a year?
Correct. Sam has a non-compete, which I believe ends a year from when he left.
Because I had heard rumblings that he did get some offers this off that people were approaching him, and that I guess he said.
I believe.
Is that accurate?
I believe it was more that there had been talks, informal talks, but no. My understanding is he cannot work in the NBA for a year after he left.
Do you think Sam would jump at the chance to get back in the league?
In the right situation, yes.
I mean, because he's an interesting cat. Like, hey, I was an NBA GM. I conquered that. I'll go and do something different. Like, he seems like he could be one of those guys.
Oh, he could be. He could have a career outside of basketball for sure. And so could Sachin. But no, I think both of them want to get back in the NBA. They want to prove, first of all, that they can do it. Mm-hmm. And second of all, I think they want to prove that they have more to offer than just tanking, more to offer than just trading for future draft picks. I think they want to finish what they started, and they clearly can't finish what they started here, but show that they, I think they want to have success in the league.
Oh, so
no, I don't.
Do you think they're like a package deal? You think?
I'm not sure I necessarily say. Let's put it this way: I think if Sam got hired, I think he would like to work with Sachin again, but I don't think they're necessarily tied. Like, I think there's a chance Sachin could get a job as, somewhere in an organization before Sam gets hired, and he could take that. So I don't think it's necessarily that they're tied. But yes, I think there's a very strong mutual respect there.
Derek Bodner's with us. Sixers 10-5. You saw 10 wins all of last year covering this team, but it's more than just Embiid. I mean, he gets so much credit he deserves. The numbers are. You've been tweeting out some numbers, and if you don't follow Derek at Derek Bodner NBA, follow Derek for some of the numbers. Go down his timeline on some of the things about Embiid that are just incredible. But it's more than him. They've won games without him to help them to get to 10-5 in the month of January.
Well, it's funny. They were like 2-11 in games Embiid didn't play. And you look at their on-off, and they were a really good team, not a really good team, but a borderline playoff team with Embiid on the court. And they were about as bad as they were last year with Embiid off the court. And then over the last 4 games, that's changed. They've won 3 of the last 4 games with Embiid really playing a completely different style of basketball. With Embiid on the court, they're the best defensive team in the league, which is startling and kind of crazy to think about. But with Embiid off the court, they've executed really well offensively. And it's been I'm not sure how much of that you can say will sustain itself. Like if Embiid misses, a couple weeks, do I expect them to have a winning record? I'm not sure I'm going to say that. But they've played very good basketball. And you're right, there's a lot of guys contributing. First of all, I think what's been interesting is that T.J. McConnell is looking like a much, much better player. And I thought I was pretty impressed by his play last year. He looks like a very legitimate backup point guard in this league. And he's playing very well. He's outplayed Sergio Rodriguez, who they went out and they brought over from Spain in the offseason. and he gives them a much better defender. And him and Robert Covington have kind of created a little bit of an identity on the perimeter defensively. And then Nerlens Noel and Rashawn Holmes, they've kind of had some success rolling to the basket, and that's helped the perimeter shooters for the Sixers play. They have some defenders off the bench now in Gerald Henderson and Timothy Luwawu. They are starting to come together. Do I think if Embiid's out for a long term? Yeah, I still have questions whether or not they're going to continue to win at this, certainly at this kind of a level. But they have done much better than I would have expected.
Derek Bodner is with us. Couple predictions from you, Derek. Okafor, here or gone?
We're talking trade deadline?
Yeah.
I think here. I think he's played too little to be moved at this point.
Noel?
I think he will be traded. And again, that's just a prediction.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly am not reporting any kind of workings, but yeah, no, I think
because his value's better.
I think his value has recouped a little bit,
or the contract.
I think there's enough value. First of all, I don't think the Sixers are going to get fair value for him, but I'm not convinced that they're willing to give him pay him what he's going to get in the summer. So I think they will get whatever value they can get.
What about Ilyasova?
That's a fantastic question, because I am not 100% sure you want to commit the kind of money he's going to get in the summer either. And you have talent at his position, at least young talent that you hope develops. But I think Brian Colangelo likes him a lot. I think he stays here. I don't know if he stays here in the summer in free agency, but I think he stays here at the deadline.
Any other guy that you think other teams will call for and the Sixers would give, any of them? Holmes, Covington, McConnell, we've already heard about him possibly with the Cavs. Anybody else you think at the deadline? Or do you think they just hold on to this group, wait for Ben Simmons and see what happens and get ready for next year, after the draft?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly I think the two guys you mentioned, I think they probably end up keeping Holmes unless they're really convinced that either Noel will sign here in the summer or Okafor, they're willing, they're buying into him as a backup big man long term. I think they end up keeping Holmes because they feel like he's kind of like their security blanket in that regard. But I think the two names you brought up in McConnell and Covington are guys that other teams around the league would have interest in. If you're looking at a potential Okafor or Noel trade, those are two guys who could be used to kind of sweeten the pot a little bit and maybe get closer back to what you're looking for. I do think they'd probably like to keep both of them, but I think ultimately sometimes you have to give up things that you like in order to get what you want. So they're a possibility. I think they're probably going to be here, but I think they're a possibility.
All right, Derek, you were a proponent of Sam, correct?
Yeah.
So at this point, are you a proponent of staying the course, working through the draft, or is it time to add a established younger player to this core?
Well, I mean, that to me is a tough question until you start getting into specifics. Like, I think there are
Jimmy Butler type of player. You go in a Jimmy Butler, that kind of second tier established star.
Yeah, I'm not. I think that should absolutely be on the table. I think one thing we've learned about Embiid is he is capable of making this team relevant quicker than I think any of us would have expected. And I think when you have a talent of that magnitude who's playing, I mean, look, he's not showing potential. He's showing dominance. And when you have that kind of timeline, I think you have to be willing to look at a guy like Butler, who is 26, 27, that level of a player, because you get that third wheel, then you're looking at it. You're not looking for future stars. First of all, you can make yourself a destination free agency, which is really tough to do, but they would still have the salary cap space to do so. But you're looking for then complementary pieces, and it is not all that difficult to then go out and get the Ilyasovas of the world who can complement Simmons, Embiid, and Butler. Yeah, I think you have enough at your disposal in terms of cap space, in terms of picks, and you've gotten enough from a guy like Embiid where you can say, if we get a guy like Butler and make the right moves, we're talking playoffs easily next year, and we're talking something real then in 2 years. I think you can move that timeline forward.
Derek Bodner at Derek Bodner NBA as the Sixers play tonight, and a really good piece, as Sachin Gupta read that piece on the Kings pick swap. A lot of details on how that all went down, and Derek, always good to catch up with you, pal.
Yep. Thank you. Anytime.